Howdy, howdy, everybody out there in YouTube land. Welcome back to JC Writing. So today we're not going to be talking about my writing. We're going to be talking about somebody else's writing. And we're not going to really deep dive into the story itself, but we're going to be talking about the elements about this particular series that I absolutely love. But before we do that, let's get into some magic, right? Because we have another channel called JC Magic where we do magic, right? If you blow, beautiful. It actually jumped back to my pocket. Yes. Yeah. Now let me show you again. Let me do it real slow. Oh, was that too fast for you? Let's slow it down for you. Very nice. We're going to do the magic gesture. If you were here, you'd be able to pick which hand you want. Of course, it doesn't matter which hand you pick, because if you said this hand, you'd be correct. Because, of course, very much of course, magic isn't really real, so how would it jump to the other hand? Alternatively, if you said this hand over here, you would be correct, because of course I am a magician. Very nice. And there's your magic for today. If you want to see more, go check it out over on Card Reviews and Magic Theory with me, your host, Jesse. Now let's get talking about this beautiful book here. Is that trademarked? I don't know if Spanking the Book's trademarked by Daniel Green. But if it is, sorry about that. I take this down right away. Terry Brooks. Grew up reading his books. I could put up a book list of the books that I enjoyed growing up and books that I still enjoy now. I don't do as much reading in this particular genre. I do more reading in this particular genre. Magic. Magic books. I have about 5 to 10 of them. Lots of books. Not a lot, not a whole lot, but books. Anyway, magic. Anywho, this is called Running with the Demon. This is from the Word and Void series by Terry Brooks. Now, when this book came out, it was not, regardless of his anthology and the way that he has put the books together, at this point, they are now connected to another series that he did, because one was kind of like, this particular book is like modernish, between like, it's actually maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago from now. Then he does another series that's 100 or so years in the future, which is like a desolate wasteland. And then he does even further in the future, thousands of years, I'm guessing, where the world is now different. Now, if you're familiar with the Chronicles of Shannara, the TV show, just take a moment of silence for the story that was completely botched. Anyway, sorry, sidetracked. Did not like it. I watched both seasons. They could have done it better. Let's just put it that way. We're also seeing that happen with another book series that I've talked about as well, and we can go into talking about that stuff. The commentary will happen, just naturally so, because there is nothing about, especially with this particular channel, that is not. There's no monetization. There's no. You can copyright it, but there's no. I can just take it down. Like that's fine. If you don't like what I'm saying, that's okay. Did not like it. It was terrible. Trash. Anyway. This is my all-time favorite series, and I grew up with all of it, and it was ruined. In that particular, they never, as far as I know, this was never turned into a movie, but I feel like in the right hands, it would be the most contemporary piece of brilliance, and here's why. Let's deep dive into why I believe this is one of the greatest series of all time. For what I've read, anyway. There's a lot of books I haven't read, so therefore there's a lot of stuff that could fit into this particular niche, if you would say, as far as I'd like to call it. And that is, it focuses a part of its story on society and culture and the things that we struggle with. In this particular book, there is situations of domestic violence. There are situations of drug abuse and addiction. And it is absolutely, it conveys like poverty in such a beautiful, brilliant way. It also focuses on strike, like union workers going on strike and people being impoverished, like especially from a small town. Again, back to the poverty side of things, but not just that, but like hardworking individuals from like the blue collar losing their job, and it's a holiday, so they're still like trying to get that patriotism for the 4th of July. So all of this is culminating into a stew pot with magic and sorcery in the background. Swords and sorcery, as it used to be called back in like the 80s and stuff. Those were some of the greatest movies of all time. Not necessarily because they were fantastic, but because the elements of the movies were linear in the sense of just great storytelling of sorts. Not all of them were the best, but they were simple in that way, and you could enjoy the plot of it. So for this particular story, I love the morality of it. I love how the main character is struggling as an individual who's approaching his 30s. He's a college dropout. He's not like, he just, and his family was not, as far as I remember, they were more middle class, but he had money to fall back on. And he went to college for half a dozen things. And as a young adult now, I can truly understand what he went through in the sense of like finding his purpose in life. So on so many different levels, this book resonated with me as a child, but now as a young adult, as a person who has seen more of the world, I am now feeling even more resonance with the story and the elements. Now that's particularly this book. The second book deals so much with, they all kind of have those same underlying themes, but the second book deals with school shootings. Something that we have dealt with year after year. Something that has been close to home for some people and further away for others. Acts of, I don't even know if I would want to go as far as calling it domestic terrorism, but we're not talking about that stuff from the sense of like actually opening up that chest for YouTube purposes. We're talking about it from the book elements of basically giving you an overview of what those books may entail. And the idea here is that the main character, the opening scene, he goes in, there's a school shooting, he fails to save the kids, and now you're feeling desperate. Again, as a child, I was reading this going, I go to school. Could this happen here? As a young adult, I'm like, I have kids. Could this happen at my school? And these are very real things that could happen anywhere, and they do happen all over. The other thing is Vietnam, but let's just say war veterans. So war veterans that are homeless, war veterans that are struggling. So we had like that homelessness and the poverty side of things and the DV, domestic violence in the first book, this one. The second one, A Night of the Word, really deals with a lot of that other, like deep diving into just homeless people everywhere. And that struggle is real, especially now, especially after 2020. In the world that we live in now, those numbers have skyrocketed even higher than they ever have been before. These stories are still relevant in the world and culture that we live in today. They would still be contemporary. They still would fit into everything that we struggle with as people, as a society, as culture. These books would still be relevant. The story could still be told in that swords and sorcery way without all of the politicalness of it, and just really telling a heartfelt story about people struggling. Really get that, I call it the 90s feel, which was like this really, not sitcom-y, but it was this really dark and gritty feel of the nature of the story. Get in the mud about it. Show the harshness of it. Show the reality of it. Show how dark the world can be so that we know that there's a light out there. Because that, my brother and I were just talking about it recently, and this is one of the points that come up, is you could almost in your heart of hearts, you could almost in that, that headcanon space of your mind believe there's a savior out there. There's somebody out there who could really help us in this time, and who really is combating the evil of the world in this secret way. And that was such a beautiful thing as a child growing up to behold, but also like a Santa Claus idea for a young adult as myself, that perhaps there is this place, this mindful place where there is a savior, a light at the end of the tunnel. The third one, Angel Fire East, is more of the story side of the story, and that one, unfortunately, I don't remember as much because it's been a while since I've read it. So that one I can't give you any exact examples at the moment of what societal things could be pulled from it. But again, that one focuses a lot more. Actually, it focuses so in the first one you have this individual who's basically tied to this struggle of good versus evil, and he's confident. In the second one, he loses that confidence because he's fighting a losing battle. And you can read the story, or if you have read the story, to understand what that means. He's already, it is what it is. So especially if you're depressed, if you're in a state of depression, a state of despair, you'll just believe that everything is going to be bad. It's always going to end up bad. And so depression could also be something that could be an overhead theme of these stories. And then in the third one, he comes back stronger than ever, reinvigorated, because he knows that what he does and his purpose in life is fulfilling some type of destiny. He knows that regardless of what his fate is, he knows that if he doesn't do anything, it'll be far worse. And I think that's also a good takeaway for life in general. We might not all be facing demons, but we are facing our own personal demons. And we'll have these up and down moments. We'll have these things that we struggle against, these obstacles in life, but not just obstacles, because obstacles would, you wouldn't call friends and family obstacles in that sense. We have obligations to fulfill, and obligations doesn't necessarily have to have a negative connotation. We know that we've got to get up and go to work. We know we've got to get the field plowed. I can't really, I'll laugh about it, but I can't use that analogy seriously because I've never plowed a field. Yeah, I've hayed before, but never plowed a field, and that is hard work. There are certain jobs that get up and you're in the mud and you just work all day, and it's hard work. And there are people out there doing those jobs, and there are people out there who are living lives that are hard. And they're getting up every day and they're doing it. And so these stories really compel us in that manner. These stories can really grow with us and become a part and ingrained in our very person, our very being. And we can look back at these stories as we grow older and really kind of start to get the feel for the immortality of the narrative of these stories. This is what we have to offer. This is what society has always been about. Ever since campfire, just sitting around the campfire telling oral stories, passing them down from person to person, and then we finally developed the ability to write the stories, and now we're conjuring the mist. We're really delving deep into the imagination and bringing forth these works of art that are beyond comparison. I mean, there is so much beauty out there that the words that I have put to paper, I would consider just fanciful in the sense of what is the narrative that has been put out there for stories like this in my mind, and the stories that you hold so dear. There are so many beautiful pieces of work out there that are yet to be explored, and there's even more things being created now. You can say the same thing with music, the same thing with artistry. There are so many people out there. There's a guy, Casey, he does the paintings of planets, absolutely gorgeous, and he even makes a joke about it, the Sha Bowl, just saying, if you know what I'm talking about, it's absolutely beautiful, and then you have video games heading in a direction. That's a sore topic for some people, but the story there's so much happening in that world. And there are so many opportunities nowadays to go back and look at, they're releasing like the original consoles, and you can go back and kind of play those games alongside of the newer games. And if you were playing games 30 years ago and now you're playing brand new games that came out yesterday. It's so vastly different. So vastly different. And there's beauty in both of those things. And there's just so much beauty in the world, and there's so much that you could be thankful for in that sense. But not just thankful. I mean, we're talking being inspired by the artists, being inspired by the creators, look at what we're doing right here on YouTube. You could be inspired today by the words that I'm saying to you, and you could become something even far beyond what you believed just from watching this video, and that would be the absolute beauty of all things. That would be amazing if that would happen for you. Doesn't matter. I've seen people, since I've been doing YouTube, I've seen people blow up in a week, 2 weeks, over a couple of years. I've seen them become YouTube famous, but I've also seen them grow beyond that and become something big. And here I am just in the puddle, in the mud, just kind of doing my thing. And that's okay, because there are people out there who are being successful because they earned it on their own merit. And they are creating something that is inspiring me to continue doing what I do. So, if you're interested in Terry Brooks, Running with the Demons, go ahead and check it out. It's good stuff. That's it's a novel of good and evil. It's part of the Word and Void series. Absolutely wonderful. If you want to read the Shannara series, as it's pronounced, I believe, from Terry Brooks, the author, listening to interviews and stuff, in my head I've always pronounced it Shannara, but it's apparently Shannara. Shannara. Beautiful story. Go ahead and check it out on Amazon or wherever you want to buy your books from. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Running with the Demon. And we will be doing this with other stories as well, so stay tuned. Thank you, everybody, and remember, always remember, stay positive, stay active, and stay awesome. And we'll see you in the next one.